Actually, I did have a hypothetical for you.
All right.
I mean, it's more of a thought experiment, I guess, than anything. But say, a good friend of yours, perfectly average guy, he comes up to you today and he says, Cecil, I went to the fortune teller and she told me I was going to get in a gunfight in 3 hours. And you had 3 hours, and he's like, I've got no skills, maybe average athleticism. He says, what are we going to do for 3 hours to get me prepared for what could be an entangled gunfight? What would you give him in those 3 hours? What would you spend the 3 hours of time
on? The hypothetical is that there's no way he can run away?
Yes, yeah. The hypothetical is that the universe has decreed this is going to happen no matter what. And
he can't escape his fate.
And yes, exactly. It's destined.
I think if it'll probably depend. Does he have decent, shooting skills? Does he already have a decent functional skill set in using a handgun, drawing a handgun? Is he able to carry a handgun? If that's yes, then the focus then becomes, I think, on making sure that you can maintain distance and that you're completely aware of how too close can get.
Right.
Because most people don't. Most people do not have an idea about that kind of stuff. Most people assume, oh yeah, oh, I got plenty of distance, and then they can't figure out how come that guy's grabbing the gun. How come that guy is holding on to them when, we were more than arm's distance apart. Yeah. And it's not something you can teach in 10 minutes. It requires a lot of work, to establish, hey, here's what we're looking at. This is too close. And this is how fast the guy can get too close from this far away. And then you go, oh, crap, that's a lot. I would probably do that. I would spend a lot of time on that and then do the work to work some basic footwork so you don't fall over, so that you can maintain a fighting platform while maintaining distance. I'd probably work on a simple thing like shooting from retention and keeping the guy out, probably with a horizontal elbow shield.
Yeah.
You can do a little bit of work with that.
So you would give him the tactics primarily, and then focus on the skills to win.
Yeah, because I think because we get too focused on the little things that don't really matter. Oh, well, I'm putting this trigger in my Glock, and that'll be easier to shoot this. Okay, well, that's fine, and and those things are valid, but they're not the important part. The important part is, can we be in a situation that we need to do what we should do? And if you're not trained, if you don't have a hand-to-hand skill set, then I'm not going to say, here's 5 easy, techniques to beat.
To be a grappler.
Yeah, to be the grappler. That's just not going to happen. But if we can say, look, you don't want to get entangled. You don't want to be too close. So let's figure out how that doesn't happen. And let's work it. Let's rep it. Let's put in some blood, sweat, and tears, some sweat equity, so that you at least have done it. Not like I saw a 5-minute YouTube video on distance. Now I'm ready to fight. Right. I'd work on that and then build off whatever skill set he had. If he couldn't have a gun, if he didn't have any ability to use a firearm, then maybe we got to change that.
Yes.
Right now, maybe it has to go a different way.
Yeah.
but it's sort of the situation. What's the best we can do in that context?
Right.
And build from there.
Totally. Yeah, I see. I definitely see what you're saying. And I mean, it's like I said, it's a ridiculous hypothetical, obviously, but
it keeps it helps you kind of crystallize training.
Yeah.
Right. It kind of helps you crystallize. Well, what should we be doing? What is important, and how it fits in. What should I focus more on? Oh, in this hypothetical, in this type of situation, I need this. Mm-hmm. Oh, but if the fight goes this way, this might be important. So you kind of, instead of just wandering around from, I'm gonna take 3 carbine classes this year and a team shoot house thing, and which is all valid. There's nothing wrong with any of that.
Oh yeah, it's fun.
As long as it's fitting into what you need.
Right.
Instead of just arbitrarily saying, quote unquote, I am training.
Yes. Trained for what?
Yeah, trained for what? A lot of guys get real heavy into like strength training. Mm-hmm. Right? They start looking at, people talk about fitness, strength conditioning for fighting. So not a lot of people start looking at cardio. Most people default to strength training.
Yeah.
And that's fine. But, you get people getting to the point where they're like, yeah, well, I'm lifting this much and I'm doing this reps. But then you find out that it hasn't helped them functionally. It hasn't made them any better to apply the technique, because now their cardio is bad, or maybe they're so sore and tired from lifting that they're not training the hand-to-hand stuff. Mm-hmm. All these things, and that doesn't mean that the strength training is bad.
Yes.
It's just you went too far down the rabbit hole on that specific thing instead of keeping it in the right context.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, instead of looking at it from the perspective of how is this going to help me be like how is it going to help me be a system of techniques and skills and tactics and mental understanding versus if I get strong, that'll solve my problems.
Right, exactly, because that's easy.
Yeah.
Right? It's a canned pat answer, and it doesn't take a whole lot of work to implement. Right? Yeah. Get a weight system, or get a set of weights and a bench or something, and a basic
or get a gun, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's easy to do, but it doesn't, in and of itself, it doesn't solve your problem. It doesn't, it adds to the overall thing, but we can't, Larry Lindemann keeps saying this over and over again and comes up all the time, and he harps on this forever. Keep the goal the goal. Mm-hmm. And that's what we lose sight. What is the goal? Being able to fight for our lives in a surprise confrontation against single or multiples, with or without weapons.
Yeah.
And so, like, okay, we need this, and this, and this is important, and this is important, and this is more important. And you know what I mean? You keep the goal so that we know what we're doing, and train all that stuff, but not just go, hey, I'm going to do this because I like this, or I dig the fact that I can tell people, now I'm deadlifting 400 pounds.
Right. Yeah, it helps us keep the context. Or rather, what's the word I'm looking for? Actually, I guess it keeps things contextualized on why we're doing what and how important that is to get to our goal.
From the point of view purely of what I need for jiu-jitsu, I'm wasting time doing jiu-jitsu now. If all I'm talking about is from a point of view of what I need to fight,
Yeah.
Any of the time that I spend training jiu-jitsu now is almost a waste.
Yeah.
You know, because I'm way past that risk to reward thing for how much
Yeah.
time I put in versus what I get out.
Yeah.
It's just I do it because I love doing it. I
Yeah.
do it up for itself. I do it from a coaching perspective because I'm always coming up with little things that I see that I go, oh, you know what, this jiu-jitsu thing I can take and apply in a weapons-based environment and then do that. So I need extra stuff. But from a fighting perspective,
right,
I'm way past the point of getting anything from jiu-jitsu. You know, and that's what we have to make. We have to keep that in mind. Are you a great shooter? You know, can you blitz a gun out from concealment and get a gun out and, you know, just over a second and get a round on target at 5 yards? And you can do that consistently cold on demand? Okay, well then probably instead of shooting 500 rounds a week, you might want to do something else at that point.
Yeah. Like maybe shift gears and get good at something else too. Yeah,
exactly. If I wasn't teaching, if I wasn't doing what I'm doing, then instead of being a jiu-jitsu 5 days a week, I should probably go once a week for maintenance.
Yeah.
At this point, you know.
Yeah.
So we have to keep that, again, keep the goal just for that reason, so we're not wasting time.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think those kind of hypothetical exercises sometimes are nice to be like, okay, well, what's important here? What do we need to focus on?
Nice. Yeah, absolutely. I'm totally with you on that. You're giving me a lot of more cerebral answers than I imagined in my head, because you're looking at more from the coaching perspective, and I'm looking at more from the student perspective, and obviously you're way deeper in it than me. So I was like, oh, well, Cecil's probably gonna say this, and because I'm trying to imagine what you would say, and then you're just going way deeper than I expected.
Hey, I'm not Paul Sharp. I actually have a brain.
Oh,
that was a good one. That was a good one.
Ooh, that was a roast. Yeah, that was fire right there.
I'm gonna text that to him right now that I just killed him on the.
Yeah, you can send him the link from very far away.
Nah.
Me and Paul, we covered a lot of stuff. Like the dirty tactics thing came up. It just never dies. Never dies.
Never dies. It just came up on a forum just yesterday, and
I don't doubt it.
And I walked away from it without engaging in it because I'm like, I've been talking about this for 30 plus years. I'm not going to do it again. It's
like what you were saying about the guys, poo-pooing all the ECQC sort of stuff. Like, well, we don't have to do that. Maybe it's best to just, sometimes just leave those people behind in a sense. Because a lot of guys like that. Either they're not going to listen or they don't want to.
Yeah.
They've made up their mind. The thing is, I can't. When I'm in one of those moods, I'm like, ooh, I'm going to get this guy, and I'm going to tell him that he's wrong on the internet and or in person. But sometimes I'm like, don't waste the time. Just let it go. It's going to be okay.
Yeah, it's just not worth it.
Yeah.
It's just not worth it. You get bogged down and stuff at that point. So it's just focus on training, focus on the stuff. We know this comes up. Everybody has to make their own decision on what's the important thing.
Yes.
Right? Some people will go, I don't need a gun. I don't need to carry a gun. I don't need to use it. I'm never going to. Oh, that's great. That's fine. You made that choice.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a whole lot different. But what I find funny is that a lot of people who will try to dismiss how much time we put into hand-to-hand stuff or entangled fighting with weapons or whatever, they will get offended at the idea of somebody saying, well, I don't want to carry a gun.
Yeah.
It's like, it's all percentages, and it's, and one is not necessarily more useful than the other. People get too ego based on all this kind of stuff. So I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing and not, yeah. I'm not going to get into any public thing with anybody anymore. I'm just let them go their way and I'll go mine.
Yeah, they can stay in the garbage and we'll be over here on the
yeah.
We've got EWO coming up what day is Tuesday, right? We've got Craig's here to do EWO this weekend.
Oh, nice.
So, and this will be my third one and Chris's second one. Anyway, we've done it before, so we'll be okay. There's other guys at the course. A couple of them we know from Chris's gym. We've had them over to do like some of the hand fighting stuff, kind of like work them up to, because a lot of these guys, some of them are athletic, but they're not they're not into the touchy feely grappling stuff. They're not as familiar with it, so we were trying to help them kind of work up to it, get ready for what's going to happen. And we've had a couple of guys there. This one fella, he's not going to listen to this, so I'm not worried about it. But when we were working with him on the first day, he showed up the next day. And he was like, man, he'd be like, oh man, after we did the thing, I went home and bought like 7 knives. I got like all these karambits and clinch picks and stuff. Like, I'm going to be like the knife guy after this. I was like, oh boy, maybe focus on like getting the arm drags good first and then buy that stuff. But, it's the hardware over the software thing for a lot of people.
Well, because that's easy.
Yeah,
that's the easy way to do all this kind of stuff. I see a lot of people, and it's great that people are buying the clinch pick. It's awesome that it's so available now, and so many people have it. But so many of the people don't have the faintest idea of how to use it.
Right.
I was just helping a guy online a couple weeks ago talking about that, and I was trying to walk him through this whole thing of why the knife looks the way it does. And you had all these other people chiming in. It was on Facebook, and all these other people chiming in about, well, you should get this knife, you should get this knife, and you're missing the point of the clinch pick itself. But it's that mentality of just gear, knife, get a knife, get 2 knives, get 3 knives, get 4 knives. It's like, no, let's optimize what we're doing. Let's optimize the gear, absolutely, beyond the shadow of a doubt. That's an important thing. I think, can you use any knife? Probably.
Yeah.
But let's have one that's optimized for what we're doing, just like a handgun should be optimized for, concealment, but being able to deal with a lot of threats. Yeah. So, so you're not shooting, whatever, a 22, or because it's easy to carry, but you're not carrying around, a Desert Eagle either, right? So we're optimizing everything, but none of that changes all the other stuff that comes before. Sure, the actual physical entangled fighting hand-to-hand skills, but also distance awareness, spatial relationship, movement, footwork, all those kind of things all come into play too. But then you tell people that, and you can just see their eyes glaze over.
Yeah. When you get into the more cerebral stuff.
Yeah, and they just want to go, but if I just buy this belt, won't that fix everything?
No, it won't.
I mean, it might give you some help somewhere.
Yeah.
But that's not what we need to do to fix it. So I don't know. I wish people, it's great that he's doing EWO.
Oh yeah, of course.
And hopefully once he goes through it, he'll see it by the end. He'll look and go, oh,
right.
This is what we're looking for.
Exactly. Yeah. I was like, Bill, I wish you just waited a week to do
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
They're not even going to get here in time. Like, it's they're not going to help you.
And of all the blades, I really dislike the karambits so
Oh,
much.
they're horrible.
Yeah. And I came up through systems that used the karambit. It's not like I'm looking at this from Mr. Jiu-Jitsu or Mr. Boxer. I came up in the Silat systems that were all karambit type stuff. These blades.
Yeah.
And I just hated them from day one.
You were woke before any of this other ECQC stuff happened. You kind of like, well, I don't know if this is actually as good as they think it is.
Yeah, because here's the funny thing. Even in the Silat days, so I had my old training partner. We were pretty stupid when we were younger. We would all the Silat stuff. All the guys go, oh, it's too dangerous, it's too lethal. You can't really do it, so you have to do it in form of stuff. Well, you know what? We'd actually did it full blast on each other. We would go into the at Arizona State University. They have this giant place. They call it the rec center.
Oh yeah,
and it's basically a giant fitness gymnasium type stuff. And they had a room that had padded floors.
Ooh.
So Will and I just went in there. We would just beat the snot out of each other doing all the Silat moves.
Yeah.
That's where I started to figure out the stuff doesn't work. And then we go, well, let's plug in weapons and do that. We'd use the karambits and all the other kind of stuff. I remember carving out or piecing together out of pieces of balsa wood like trainers.
Yeah.
Emulate, because we don't, back then we didn't have the luxury that we have now, just going online and ordering whatever we want from somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. Just getting a couple knocks.
Yeah, it's like, oh, I got that. Okay. But no, we'd have to make it, and then trying to use it, and you're like, this makes no sense. It doesn't fix any particular thing that a regular blade doesn't do just as well. Plus, you can do more with the regular blade.
Yeah.
So even in 91, I was like, no thanks.
I'll pass on the karambits.
Yeah, I can pass on that.
Nice. Yeah, I'm sure there was a time when I would have loved it from like the nerd that doesn't know how the equipment is used or like the philosophy of use. Yeah. Or the methodology or anything like that. I would have just been like, hey, that thing is curved like a bird's talon. That means it's good, right? I mean, I probably just loved it. But now when I see them, and guys have them out at EWO and that sort of thing, I'm like, geez, I really don't know about this. And I mean, they just can't make them work.
Yep. Well, and that's really the funny thing about all this, because that's what it all comes down to is, show me.
Yeah.
I'm not coming at this from the point of view of I'm so smart, I know it all, I figured this stuff out. If you can show that you can do it, that it works, great, awesome. I'd love to add to my arsenal. I'd love to have more choices out there. That would be great.
Yeah.
Craig's that way. Paul's that way. We're all of us doing the same stuff. You want to come to my coursework and try this? Great, go ahead. You want to go to EWO and bring your karambit? Great. But every time it happens, it fails miserably. It doesn't, it just doesn't work. Did I tell you about when I had the guy come to one of my seminars last year and just got worked? He was an old school, like traditional martial artist.
Sounds a little familiar, yeah.
And he got worked, and he's on the bottom. The other guy's on mount, basically technical mount on top of him.
Yeah.
Can't get out of it. He's gassed out, and this is after like 40 seconds. He can't do anything, and he's like pawing at the guy's head. He's kind of like waving his arm up to the guy's head, and whatever. And so at the end, after we did the debrief, I asked him what was he doing, and he was saying, well, I was looking for pressure points.
Oh man.
and on the one hand, I'm laughing my ass off.
Right.
On the other hand, I'm like, yeah, and what can we conclude from your experience? And goes, well, it's not something that can be relied on. And I'm like, yes, but I didn't tell him you're not allowed to do your traditional martial arts stuff.
Right.
You're not allowed to do that. You want to try it? Great. We weren't even that padded. It wasn't, it was basically some MMA gloves, and and a mouthpiece, and that was the only padding. Mm-hmm. So, and he didn't even have MMA gloves on. So if the pressure points are going to work, it would have worked then, because he didn't have to worry about getting through helmets and all that other kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And
it still couldn't make it work.
And he could not make it work. So, and Craig's the same way. You want to come and do whatever art that you think is cool, awesome, great, go for it. But you have to produce the results.
Yeah.
We're not going to hand it to you. We're not going to give you everything that you need to make it work. We're going to give you a level playing field.
Yeah.
And we're going to give you the equal opportunity. But it's up to you to produce. And you know what? It never happens.
Right. Right. I would change my mind immediately if I could see the proof.
Yep. If you could show it to me, great, awesome. That more power to everybody. That would be. There's no downside to that. But it just doesn't happen.
Here, let me just check my notes here on where we can drift from here. I've got actually that's related to something that I was going to bring up before as well. Okay. So when we're talking about building the multidisciplinary tactician and the guys you got guys with the hand skills, the knives, the guns, the guys who are competent at those inside ranges. When we're building somebody like that, you said it before. That gear does play a part, and optimizing your gear is important.
Yeah.
What are some considerations you would offer for somebody who maybe hasn't done EW or ECQC and is listening to this and is wondering if their equipment setup is good, but they haven't tested it yet? Obviously, to them I would say just go do the class.
Right.
But for somebody who's listening in and maybe is starting to think about these sort of things, what would you say to them about the considerations they should have for their gear?
Whoa, see, I always have the cop out. Well, do the course.
Yeah.
And then that's
absolutely.
When we speak the same language, then it becomes easier to discuss these kind of things. But for those who haven't done it, what I would say is this: look to see the common threads on the people who have done it. And again, because we don't put particular limitations on stuff, because we don't say, well, you're not allowed to do this, and so everything gets funneled a certain way. The end results are pretty pressure tested in an honest way. So if you see the majority of people who've been through that training are doing similar things and using similar gear, I think that's a clue. Yeah. So, there's certain holster makers that a lot of us will gravitate towards.
Yeah.
The knife, the knives, the blades, the edge weapon stuff. There's certain things we gravitate toward. We don't all walk in lockstep. None of us. Even if you put me, Paul, Larry, Chris, Craig in the same room, we're not going to agree on all those things.
Yeah.
But the general gist of what we're doing is going to be the same.
Yeah.
So, because I don't want to say do this.
Yeah.
Just what you do. Appendix holster with this gun and a clinch pick here on this belt.
Yeah.
And if you're not doing that, you're not cool. That's because that's not the point.
Yes.
but you'll kind of start to see fairly similar type things.
You see the consistency between,
yeah,
and the attitude that the guys have, that you guys have towards why we're doing this and why we're setting things up this way.
Right, exactly. And that hopefully will help guide people in certain choices without me or Craig or anybody else saying, do this.
Yeah.
Because we all are different. None of us carry the same gun. None of us completely use the same holster all the time. None of us between all, and that's not just me and the guys, but it's the people like yourself who've taken multiple courses.
Yeah. And I have what I like, and I mean, there's
right,
and it would be consistent with you guys in the sense that when you or Craig something, says something like, "Hey, this is why I do this." I say that makes sense. I can see it working. I've experienced why this works and why this is better than X, Y, and Z methods. So that's why I do it. I don't just do it because you guys do it, and I'm like, those guys are cool. I want to be like them.
Right.
And if and everybody's physically different as well. So if you guys all looked one way and you all did the same thing, and me with a different body type, I couldn't do that. Well, I wouldn't force myself to do it. I would just pick something slightly different. But I feel like, and I mean, obviously that's the same with people who come to the classes, right? Everybody's different, and everybody has different preferences and has different setups. But I feel like, probably everybody coming out of the back end of those classes understands, like, okay, these are maybe the guidelines I should follow. Not necessarily these are the products I should buy.
Right, yeah, exactly. Here's the pressure-tested concepts of, if we're talking about gear.
Yeah.
This is a little bit better than that.
Yeah.
And this is a lot better than this. And so then you go and you can make your choice based on what fits you.
Yeah.
Not everybody likes the clinch pick. Awesome, great, cool. Some people prefer a different type of small fixed blade knife. Awesome.
Yeah.
Some people don't like the downward angle carry with the clinch pick.
Yeah.
Great. As long as here's the problem. There's people who look at something and decide to be contrary.
Yeah.
Or they decide they've got a preference without understanding it.
Yeah.
I have an issue with that, right? If you don't like the handle coming down at an angle under the belt because it doesn't work for you, it doesn't work for your mode of dress, or whatever, that's fine. But don't do it just because you dislike the looks of it.
Yes.
And you've never done any kind of training, and you've never learned why the blade's carried that way.
Right.
You just prefer it, I'm going to carry it horizontal on my belt, or I'm going to carry it vertical with the handle upwards. Those are all, it's fine. I don't have an issue with that.
Yeah.
As long as you're doing it because you decided to and tested it.
Yes, right. Right.
And you don't do the other thing, awesome. But that's because you're making an informed decision. Like a guy here locally, a shooting instructor locally here I work with, and I teach a course with, Glenn Stilson of Independence Training. Mm-hmm. Awesome shooter, great guy. He normally carries at 3 o'clock or 3:30 with his gun. He'll occasionally carry appendix for specific stuff, but it's not his favorite. He's been through ECQC twice. He's been through EWO. He's been through AMIS twice. So he understands it. And he knows the pros and cons. And he goes, this works best for me. Awesome. That's cool. I'm not going to say, well, you're an idiot.
Yeah.
But I do have a problem with the guy who carries at 3 o'clock and goes, oh, you guys carry appendix, you're going to shoot your junk off. Right? Yeah. That's the problem. Now we're into that argument area because you're making uninformed dogmatic points.
Right.
as opposed to, informed choice. Okay, this is my choice. Great, awesome,
Yeah.
support you.
Yeah, a lot of people say, like, oh, well, this works for me, without really quantifying what that means. Like when somebody says, this setup works for me, right? Or I'm trying to think of this. This came up to me recently because I made a remark on Twitter or something like that about one thing or the other, some equipment related thing, and some guy jumped up and said, well, my setup works. It was shooting a 1911 with your thumb on the safety.
Oh, okay.
With your riding your thumb on top of the safety.
Okay.
Which, as far as I thought, was like the way to do it. I didn't realize that anybody else was riding their thumb under the safety.
Right.
And this guy jumps up and he's like, well, riding the thumb under the safety works for me. And I was like, well, what does that really mean when you say it, like, works for you? Like, what's your expectation of use? Like, do you have any standards when you say it works for me? Like, do you have any expectations of performance? Because, anything can work for you if you just decide it works for you and you don't have anything, and you have no expectations.
If you haven't tested it.
Right, exactly.
Tested it under any situation. If your testing is going to the range 2 or 3 times a year, and you're shooting not from the holster, you're shooting from the bench, and you shoot 50 rounds, well, you know what? You probably can get away with putting your thumb under the safety.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that that's actually working for you when you actually need it to defend yourself.
Right. Like when I want to find out maybe a better way that might work for me, I'm like, okay, what do the best guys do? Maybe I should, even if that, as I said, even if that doesn't work for me for whatever reason, like because of I can't afford their equipment, or I can't do some, or I'm not athletic enough to do this technique, or I haven't trained it well enough. Even if I just look at those guys and I see, okay, what can I learn from them, rather than just me sitting here being like, oh no, what I do is absolutely fine, it works for me, and never finding out what I don't know.
Right. I just normally I don't carry a Glock. I don't like Glocks. They're not my favorite. I've never shot them particularly well. I don't enjoy them. But you know what the gadget is?
No, I don't.
It's a thing that was co-invented between Todd Green and a engineer named Tom Jones.
Oh, okay.
And it's basically, it replaces the back plate on a Glock. And it's a little lever. And so what you do when you're reholstering, you can put your thumb on the plate and it blocks the striker from moving.
Oh, okay.
So when you reholster, you minimize any chance of something getting in the way of the trigger and the gun going off.
Yeah.
And it's I think the originally was invented like 2011. It's been in beta testing for years and years and years. Craig was running a couple of them on some of his Sims guns.
Oh, okay.
So it just went into production finally, I don't know, last year, 6 months ago or something. And the inventor, Tom, sent me one. And I went ahead and since he was nice enough to send it to me and I put it on my Glock, I'm going to carry the Glock for a little bit. Just to run it and test it. And you get, that's the least I can do, as much as I'm like, Glock.
Yeah.
I'm going to do it. So, but here's the other thing that I dislike about my Glock 19 is the trigger. I hate the trigger. It's that rough, ridged thing, and it just destroys my finger.
Yeah.
50 rounds, 100 rounds in, it just destroys my finger. So here I'm thinking, all right, you know what? Well, everybody's talking about, flat triggers on Glocks, right? There's all these, gajillion aftermarket triggers.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, well, maybe I should go to that because that would be more comfortable on my finger. So here's what I did. I called a couple of my friends who are really good shooters and who carry all the time and who are knowledgeable and who run Glocks. And I asked them, what do you think about flat triggers? And so they gave me their experience, their thought processes on it. It's not me going, well, this is what I think.
Right.
Right. This is, I think this can be good, so I'm going to do it because it's comfortable for me. No, I went and talked to people who have the experience in it, and I got their input on whether it's a good idea to even try it first, as opposed to just making that arbitrary decision.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's how it should be. It's not because it works for me. No, if you don't know what the alternative is, how do you know that this is actually working for you?
Right. What does working mean? Like, everything works for you, and like everything works for me personally when I'm just sitting on the couch looking at my computer. Everything's working for me just great.
And if you don't know the alternative, right? If you've never worn a gun in a good appendix holster, you've never worn it, and all you've heard is, you know, the guys on the internet, you know, you'll shoot your junk off and stuff, right? You've never done it, you've never talked to it, you've never seen it. How do you know yourself that it's not comfortable for you? Well, you know, it's just not comfortable. Well, how do you know? Based on what?
Exactly. I have a buddy. I have a buddy who was supposed to come to EWO, and he flaked out. Long story short. And every day at work, he comes up to me and he's like, "Hey, check out this new, $500-600, like Kershaw polished whatever steel, like steel snob kind of guy." He's got all this money for all these knives and sheaths and equipment and stuff. But he doesn't have enough money to do the course. He's got enough money to buy the equipment, and he likes Craig's designs, like the Disciple and the Clinch Pick and stuff, and the Pakal especially, because he figures they work for him, right? But I was like, but you haven't tested them in the way that the other guys have. Like, you haven't figured out if it actually works for you or not, or how you're going to make it work. Quotation marks. It's just, it's meaningless. Like, it's just, you don't really know if it works for you personally. They're obviously, Craig makes great purpose-driven tools, but this or that setup may not really work. Like, he tried clipping his clinch pick to his belt, like upside down, so like the blade was up, like not up. I'm trying to think of how to describe it. The handle was up, so it was like the tip angled down. And like the blade, when it comes out, it touches his beer belly. I was like, oh man, that is not. Oh, geez. That's
not a good. If you got it, people cut themselves on their fingers all the time with that orientation.
Yeah, but it works for him, right? That's what he's decided. I was like, oh man, you just can't tell these people anything.
Nope. All you have to do, the best you can do is keep presenting the information as well articulated as possible, and hope that it sinks in at some point. Because sometimes it does. Sometimes it does take a while. There's been plenty of people who are now pro Cecil, pro Craig, pro Paul, who weren't 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago.
Yeah.
But we just kept pushing it, because one of the things is, especially all of us, we've been around doing this for a really long time now.
Yeah.
And that we're consistent in what we're doing. We're not, there's no fads with us. There's no jumping around. There's no, well, now this is the cool thing. The clinch pick was cool then, but now we're doing this, Mm-hmm. We're very consistent and honest about all this. And I think eventually at some point people start going, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Maybe they have something to say.
Yes.
And then they start looking. So I think that's the best we can really do.
Yeah. Sometimes it's just like presenting the information. I think we talked about this last time, just having even just a slight variation in the way you present the same information can change somebody's mind. Just the way that something's phrased, or the way that they see something play out in a way that makes sense to them, can be the when the light bulb comes on.
Yep.
Do you have time to talk about that Army hand-to-hand study?
Yeah.
Because I would love to go over it.
Yeah.
Not every paragraph at length, but like some of the like key learnings we might take away from it, perhaps.
Yeah, sure. Um, I think here's the important part in it is, number one, it's huge, right? There's thousands of incidences that the Army's compiled.
When was it published? Just
2014, maybe.
And this was a study that covers, I'm guessing, like hand-to-hand combatives use.
It was basically what the Army does is every time any soldier gets into any situation where he's going to go hands-on.
Anytime you put hands on somebody, yeah,
there's a report.
Yeah.
Somebody takes a report. Somebody files a report where it's documented. Well, what happened?
Yes.
And basically the way it started was and I think it started after 2001, right after the war on terror started.
Yeah.
And everybody started ramping up and that kind of stuff. But it was basically a way to see if their curriculum, the modern Army combatives curriculum, worked.
Yes.
And so Matt Larson, the inventor or the creator of it, started documenting all this, and the Army just kept it up. And so they've got thousands and thousands and thousands of incidences.
Yeah, that would be huge.
And they produced a study where they kind of went through everything. And I've just read the basic summaries on everything.
Yeah.
Instead of going through all the, piece by piece. I think it's out there. I think it's out there. You can.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I would love to look at it for myself too.
Yeah, I think it's online, or I don't know if it's the whole thing, but at least I know the summary's available.
Yeah, and the overview and the is going to give you like the juicy bits anyway.
Yeah, exactly. And then basically it kind of go, it says, well, here's what actually happens.
Yes.
In modern combat with firearms in typical modern warfare situations.
Yeah.
Because the criticism of the the Army combatives program is always that it's grappling centric, right? It's jiu-jitsu centric. The original first level 1 of it was almost straight jiu-jitsu for the most part. And I think it wasn't until level 2 that they introduced any stand-up stuff. And
those jiu-jitsu guys getting their hands and everything, man.
Yeah, exactly. Horian and those guys, man, they brainwashed Matt Larson and the Rangers.
The sheep.
But so they looked at all this stuff, and basically what it came down to was this stuff works. The Army combatives program works. They have very few instances where things go wrong.
Yeah. Where
it's, this is a negative or this is a negative. They made a couple adjustments, I think, based on the study where some stand-up stuff gets put up more into the first level. But it's still jiu-jitsu centric. And the typical criticisms are, those, you're not going to go hands-on. You're not going to be in entanglement.
Oh boy.
with ARs, with M4s and all that kind of stuff. And then it's like I said, it's been a year or two since I looked at the study, but I want to say that the percentage of hands-on incidences that actually were in entanglement were high 60s.
Oh, wow.
67, 68. I have to go back and look. But it was ridiculously high. So it pretty much gives the lie to this idea that grappling has no place, and it's done to teach soldiers grappling as their first line of defense. Yeah. But here's the thing. Any historian, any military historian could have told them that.
Yes.
Because it's throughout history.
Yes.
The hand-to-hand fighting system that accompanies soldiers is always grappling.
Yeah.
Always. And it's just as true with firearms as it was without.
Yes.
Because you still have the same issues.
Yeah.
It's easier to grab onto a guy, keep him from doing something that you don't want him to do, and then continue the fight, as opposed to you starting to swing wildly at blows on the modern battlefield with bullets whizzing by.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people don't think about this kind of stuff. The hand-to-hand methods of the samurai and the medieval knight have more in common with what we're doing now, and have more place than practically any of these other kind of, you know, combative stuff that people want to talk about.
Yes. Yeah, like there's I was talking about this with Craig on the interview I did with him. Like, you look at these old swordsmanship manuals and they're like 80% grappling, most of them.
Yep.
Like, it's guys like tying each other up, picking each other up by the leg, you know, catching those outside singles and then like sticking a dagger through somebody's eye slot. Like, it's not this at range, you know, trying to poke each other with whatever melee implement they happen to have, right? Like that. It seems to me like those events, some guy will get hit, and you can see it now too in the way guys fight, even in the street, for example, right? Two guys will be randomly swinging at each other. One guy gets hit bad. He's like, "Oh, I don't want to be out here. This is a bad idea," and then he grabs onto the other guy.
Yep, that's exactly right.
Yeah,
and here's the funny. See, this is the thing. Whenever I hear all these guys talk about, oh, don't teach soldiers that, teach them striking. Really? So a guy who's weighed down with 80 pounds of equipment, body armor, helmet, you're going to teach him to stick and move with striking. Okay.
Great.
And on top of that, who's his target? Probably somebody equipped somewhat like himself.
Yeah.
Right? Even ISIS fighters, if you see the footage of ISIS fighters on the battlefield, what do they typically dress? At the very least, they've got a chest rig, right, with AK mags.
Yep.
They've got a helmet on.
Mm-hmm.
So what are you going to punch?
Right.
What are you going to axe hand? What are you going to chin jab?
Yeah.
Nothing. But what you can do is get a control, get an underhook, get an elbow tie, get a body lock, get to the back. You're going to do those things, and then you can take care and finish the fight at that point. That's what works time and time again. And then on top of it, the idea, and this is something that a lot of us, like Paul and Larry and myself, we've been talking a lot about the last couple of years, is how striking just is, and all of us have come from a striking background.
Yeah.
Right? If you look at all of us in the ShivWorks collective, none of us started with grappling. None of us were wrestlers in high school or judo when we were kids. We were all boxers, kickboxers, Filipino martial arts, all this kind of stuff. And so we came from the striking side, and then we found with us and teaching people, it's really difficult, number one, to teach somebody with no background to punch somebody in the head really hard and for it to work.
Yeah.
And then even with somebody trained who's used to it, it doesn't work that often.
Yeah.
Right? Sometimes you punch a guy and lights out with one punch. Other times you hit him 10 times and he just kind of goes, okay, I guess it's on.
Yeah.
And that's tough enough from an urban self-defense perspective.
Yeah.
Imagine that on the battlefield.
Yeah.
It makes no sense that, but these guys are so tight. Here's the thing. Like I said, if you can show me, if you can prove to me, if you can prove to Craig, if you prove to Paul, prove to Larry, prove to Chris that you have something that works that we don't do, dude, I'm the first one to line up for you to teach it to me.
Yeah.
Right then. Boom. Let's figure this out because this is great. But the people on the other side, the guys who are mindlessly, World War II combatives,
Oh my
this
God.
stuff, you know, that's everything that they do. Far too often becomes we test it. We're not testing the theory. We're setting up drills to reinforce our theory.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just it just falls apart. And the more we have these studies, the more we have the information coming out, the more that this becomes true. It's not kind of like iffy. It's not kind of like going one way or it might turn the other. It's all leading us in one specific direction over and over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah, you could say everyone happens to be coming to the same bottom line.
Yeah. If you are honestly testing it with complete freedom of action and an open-ended, unscripted training drill,
yeah,
we all come to the same conclusions.
Yeah.
You know, again, with wiggle room within those general conclusions.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we all have our little things. Paul likes something a little bit more, like he prefers this, and I'll do this, and Lara prefers that. But the overall contextual situation and how we're going to do it, it's pretty damn similar. And anybody who's been through it ends up doing the same. Even the guy. It's so funny. Everyone will go, "Oh yeah, you guys are a cult." No, we're not.
Not really. Yeah.
We're not.
No.
We're not because we don't. The people who are coming to our way of thinking, they're not doing it because they want to follow. Oh, we're going to dress in ShivWorks t-shirts.
Yeah.
I
do have a couple ShivWorks t-shirts. I'll be honest.
Well, that's mostly because they're cool. They do a cool design.
Yeah.
Right? But there's none of this, well, what pants is Craig wearing?
Right.
What shoes is Paul wearing? There's none of that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's people coming to this who from all different areas.
Yeah.
Who we've never associated with before, who never had anything to do with us, but they're coming through from the same training, and they come to the same point of view. Like Mike Pannone, right? When I first started talking to Mike, we were talking about like our experiences doing this and this. He was doing this kind of training. He had a couple buddies who they would do this kind of training. They would get Sims guns, they would get this kind of stuff and roll. And he'd like, we didn't have, we had basic level Army combatives, jiu-jitsu, pretty low level, but we were doing this, and this is the result. And so Mike goes, yeah, we're doing this. This. We have the same mindset. We have the same outlook. We have the same focus on this kind of stuff. Mike said to me, what he does in his covert carry class is basically ECQC from 5 yards out. Same mindset stuff. But it's not because Mike Pannone wants to be like me.
Yeah.
Right? I was like, Cecil's so cool. I go, no, I think he's cool enough on his own.
You're right.
But he's looked at the problem, worked on figuring out an answer, and he's like, yeah, I agree. This is how it works.
Yeah.
And that's what all this stuff does. If you're actually testing it, you kind of come to this meeting of the minds.
Yeah.
Not necessarily we're going to all be buddies and hang out and chant Kumbaya together.
Right.
But we're going to be like, yeah, I get that. That's cool. Yeah, let's train together. Let's work out. Oh, what do you think about this?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not a cult. It's based on reality. It's based on doing the work and getting some results out of it.
I was going to say it's results oriented. It's results.
Yeah, exactly.
Speaking of results, let me change gears here on you real quick, because there's one or two, like, I don't want to say technical things, but I guess skill related things I wanted to cover. I know you have a couple opinions on throws and takedowns. I don't want to say for the streets, but that's what it's going to sound like, so I'll just say it. Basically, what I want to know is, when you look at having a technical syllabus for the streets, what kind of techniques are better than others? For
As far as throws?
Yeah, throws, takedowns, anything to get your man from his feet to the ground. And also there's and we could easily bridge over into this after, but a lot of people say, "Oh, don't go to the ground in the streets."
Right.
But this is so we're gonna end up crossing over into that anyway. But first, what I want to talk about is just like the technical guidelines, I guess. How do we pick the right techniques to do that?
Well, here's the thing with throws. That's probably the hardest thing to train, and it's probably the hardest thing to learn.
I agree with that.
Jiu-jitsu, the ground fighting is the most complex. It has the most variables, but as long as you're doing it, you'll get it.
Yeah.
Throws, on the other hand, they're just so hard because there's so much thing about timing and setups and motion and understanding the guy's balance and all things. It's so hard. People look at something simple like a blast double leg.
Yeah.
And they go, "Oh yeah, okay, simple technique." But literally for wrestlers to pull it off, they're working for 10 years of training, doing maybe almost nothing but blast doubles, right? Yes. They start when they're 5 years old, and it's like maybe the first takedown they learn, and then maybe by the time they're in high school, they kind of have it.
Yeah.
So, and that's simple. I mean, of all the throws, something like a double leg is pretty simple.
Yeah.
I think with throws, I don't think you can say these are the 5 best throws.
Yeah.
Because it's so uniquely individual.
Sure.
This last Saturday, so my coach is in Europe competing at the European Championships this weekend.
Sweet.
So he's gone at least for the rest of the month. So I was running Saturday class, and one of my main training partners, who's a really good judoka, was there, and so we both were going to teach some throws.
Yeah.
Well, we both taught a variation of a sacrifice throw.
Yeah.
Here's the thing: the one I do really well. The one I taught. I'm sorry. The one I taught, I do really well. It's a very high percentage move for me.
What was it?
It's basically a bastardization of sumagaesh.
Oh, that's a good one.
It's more of a corkscrew rolling one, as opposed to using the classic hooking the guy's leg.
Oh, okay.
It's more of a momentum one.
Oh, okay, nice. I love a good sumi.
I like it a lot. It works great for me. It suits my game.
Yeah.
And then Joe was teaching, it's actually more of a sambo throw. It's a really goofy, weird throw where you pin the guy's arm in the collar and drive under him. It's a very goofy throw.
Huh, yeah.
I can't do it. Joe can pull it off at will against black belts.
Yeah.
Now my throw, my sumagaesh, I can pull off, and Joe can't do.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to get across the idea that there's so many variables.
Yeah, no, that does make sense. That makes sense.
The main thing that I look to see is how much damage are you doing to yourself with the throw in training and potentially when you have to use it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the overriding factor. So, like, I love drop seonagi. That's the only way I can pull off seonagi.
Yeah.
The problem is I don't think that's, well, number one, just training it. You hit 100 of those in training, you screw up your knees and shins pretty bad.
Yeah.
And that's on mats, right? Yeah. Imagine actually pulling that off on asphalt.
Yes.
But it works. People do it. I just put a video up on my blog of a woman doing it on the street.
Yeah, is it the one where it's it looks like they're in like Africa or something like that?
Yeah,
and
some village in Africa, and
she like
the guy's like bothering her.
Yeah, and she just like kind of you can see her kind of set it up too. She kind of like gives him a little shove and checks his resistance, and then doesn't she do? She just does like double collar, doesn't she?
Essentially, yeah, and
yeah.
then just drops
Boom.
under him, and it worked.
Yeah.
Knocked his ass out.
Yeah.
But for me, my perspective is I don't know if that's a good one to practice and to count on for most people.
Yeah.
Right.
Also,
obviously it works.
Yes. Yeah.
But what are you going to do to yourself down the road to do it?
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. And when I was looking at that video, I was watching it with one of my buddies, and he was like, "Oh man, I would love to learn how to do that." And I was like, "You know what? She's probably done that a few thousand times, if not more, to be able to get that fast and just rip it like that."
Yep, exactly. It's not easy to do.
Yeah.
Theoretically, the best throw takedown, the best street throw takedown you could do is a judo foot sweep. Any of the different variations in judo foot sweeps. Yeah. That would be ideal.
Yeah.
Like if you had a hierarchy of like, hey, this is what works. Because you dump the guy hard. Mm-hmm. You don't go down with him. Right? You can stay entangled or you can become unentangled to pull it off. It's great. Here's the problem. It's probably the single hardest category of throws to do.
They're very delicate in a sense.
Yeah. It's pure timing.
Yeah.
It's if you have not put in 10,000 reps to understand it, you are not going to consistently get a foot sweep. I've been trying it for 25 years and I still can't pull them off consistently, which is amazing because my coach, that's probably one of his two best moves. Right? And he's foot swept me. He's probably foot swept me 10,000 times. So you think just by osmosis, I would figure it out.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's hard. It's very, very difficult. So to say, for somebody to look at that and, from outside to go, oh, well, that makes the most sense. Do a judo foot sweep. Okay, great. Good luck with that, D'Artagnan, when you go to practice it, right. Especially if you have no other throwing experience.
Yes.
So basically the thing I'm trying to get at is look at throws ideally that aren't going to damage you either in training or in actual application. Yeah. And then look at ones that you can actually work.
Yes.
And practice the hell out of them.
Yeah.
That's the only way. I don't think there's anything to say, do these 5. Look at these 5. Mm-hmm. Because, theoretically, you look at any kind of turning throw, say a nagi, koshiguruma, or something like that. Yeah. Oh, I'm turning my back on the other guy and he could choke me or take my back, whatever. Sure, absolutely. Unless you know how to pull it off. Right. Like that girl in that video. Yeah. You think that guy had the slightest shot at choking her or taking her back?
Nope, not even a little.
Right. So theoretically, that was a bad technique. You know what I mean? For her.
Yes. If she had screwed it up, she would have ended up in potentially a worse place. But she didn't. She did just fine.
And that's what practice is about. So I think throws are important. I think throws and takedowns are important. But I think I move them to a little bit down the list of stuff to do just because they're so hard to pull off.
Yeah. So in terms of like having a couple techniques for getting guys off of their feet in that sort of context, you would just want something more like like an inside knee pick or something like that, right? Like something a little easier.
I would like a typical more Greco style type throw. Yeah. Sort of any of sort of the twisting pancake throws. Mm-hmm. Those are really nice because you can get them off that single that underhook overhook combinations.
Yeah.
Those are pretty good. Pretty safe for the most part. I do a variation on Sasai Shirakomi off a single, off an underhook and overhook that I like a lot. That's a really good one, and it's not a strength throw. I like that one a lot.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's just hard because I can look at, you can give me any throw and I can say, yeah, that's really good because of this. But then I could also say, but you have to think about this.
Right. Yeah.
Like I said, the blast double, very good, very technically simple, very easy to teach. But the timing of it is tough. It's more of a strength and speed move. It works less with a smaller guy against a bigger guy.
Yeah.
Same with most of the Greco-Roman throws.
Yeah.
They don't work quite as well against a bigger guy, whereas a little more of a judo type throws, including like Seonagi's or Koshiguruma or something like that, work a little bit better in that context. But man, it's still tough.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, and it is tough because, I mean, obviously I'm not the guy anybody is asking about this sort of thing, but even when I sit and think, okay, what techniques do I know? What would I prefer to focus on if I was condensing my skill set and saying, like, okay, if this was a situation I was in, this is what I would prefer to do. And I mean, I really, it's hard to come up with a good answer.
Yeah. I've got a couple for myself, but I'd have a really hard time saying that everybody should follow my path on that.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and as you said before, what works for you isn't what works for me, especially when we're talking about something like judo, where you look at what the best guys are doing, and they're not all doing the same thing.
Right. There are guys out there who, from a traditional judo perspective, you'll get straight judo guys going, that's wrong. Yeah. But it works.
Yeah, and I mean, judo rules aside too. I like the sambo stuff a lot. I like the freestyle judo sort of deal. Where you can also do, like, you've got your singles and your doubles, and you got your big pickups. Like, you can't do teguruma in judo anymore, I guess.
Right.
But
which is just the worst. I hate that idea that they take that out. That's
me too. I don't know any committed judo guy that thinks that's what they should be doing either. But
yeah, exactly. All the judo guys are like, no, keep it in.
It's I hate to say this about people that I don't know and haven't met and understand, but it seems like this weird impulse to, like, protect judo from all these outside influences, and we need to keep judo pure and Japanese and none of these leg grabs, and we need to protect what's ours rather than something like jiu-jitsu, which is like, hey, put it on me, like, it's all okay. If you can make it work, then it's good.
Yep. I agree.
Yeah, I don't know any. I mean, there's guys who are like, well, that's the rules, so we have to do it that way, but they don't really love it either.
Right. Right.
And I like we said before, I think judo loses a lot by taking that stuff out, which is why I like watching sambo more, and I like what they're doing because it's all in.
Right. I agree. I would like to see that one that has it all.
Yeah. Do you imagine? Do you have like maybe a couple more minutes for one more? I don't want to keep you for too long.
No, that's fine. No, that's fine.
Because and I hate to get technical on these things. Actually, I'm feeling just laden down with these heavy concepts you're putting on me, Cecil. I feel like I'm lifting weights or something. I'm like, oh God, so much to think about. I know you're a guy that knows how to hit hard. So when we look at throwing hands and such, how is hitting hard really done? Like, because as far as I can tell, from from the Muay Thai and all this other stuff, is that the smallest details can really make a huge difference.
Yep.
So what do you find are big pieces of the puzzle in hitting hard that many people are missing? We'll keep it to boxing.
The what you're looking at is you're needing to get your weight moving as explosively as possible. There's like your one sentence wrap up.
Yeah.
Right? The problem is then people don't quite realize what that means. So they think it means something else.
Yeah.
The way I always describe it is this. Let's say that that you are standing at like a brick wall.
Yeah.
And you need to push that wall down. Your life depends on you pushing that wall over. So you're going to do a couple things. Number one, both feet are going to be stuck to the ground, right? Both feet have to be gripping the ground and propelling and driving you forward. If you don't have that traction, you can't do anything.
Yes.
The second thing that you cannot do is you can't move your weight upwards. And what I mean is your weight has to be going in the same direction that you want the wall to fall, right? Where you're forced to go, right?
Yes.
So if you're gonna push on that wall, let's say you're squatted down a little bit, right? You drop your ass a couple inches. You're gonna push on that wall. If the minute that you start to go upwards, right, that you lift up and your head goes up,
yeah,
where's your force going?
It's going up.
It's going up. It's not going into the direction you need it to go. All we're doing with punching is doing that really fast.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
I do see what you mean.
It's no different. Pushing a wall, pushing a car up the hill, closing the door of a bank vault, any super heavy thing that we've got to move, it's the same as punching. The punching is just we got to do it explosively. That's it.
Yeah. At incredible high speed.
Yeah, but the same basic driver still exists. If I throw a punch, if I'm trying to throw a punch at your chin, and my rear foot comes up, if I'm throwing a cross at your chin, and my rear foot comes up so that like just the tips of my toes are on the ground,
yes,
I no longer have traction. Right.
Which is the thing that so many people do after I went to immediate action pugilistics and you gave us the talk about the plate and the spike with the feet. I noticed so like it's incredible how many people do that, and I do it too. Like I've been doing it for so long that it's hard to break out of that. But the back foot coming off the floor, I notice it in everybody now. Yep. And I was like, shit, we've been doing this wrong the whole time. Like, we've been doing it wrong the whole time. And it's such a small detail.
It's a small detail, but it's what people do who don't know. If you look at any of the people who hit hard, Sonny Liston, George Foreman, on and on. You look at any of the people, that the moment of impact, both feet have traction. Both feet are driving off the ground. Yeah. Now, as soon as the power's delivered, maybe they come up because they're moving. Yes, that's why you come up because you're moving, right?
When Mike Tyson throws an uppercut, he springs up a little bit.
Yeah, he comes up and then he's shifting maybe to another angle or setting up the next punch, but he's moving, maybe moving straight forward, but moving. Yeah. So we think We look, and it feels better to do that with that, where now your foot's up, because that's how you're moving forward, but not at the instant of impact.
Yeah, right.
And so if you take that away, you've literally taken away that ability to push. And if you can't push, then you can't deliver that power, because it just doesn't go anywhere.
Yes.
And then the other thing with the coming up, this idea of keeping your hips driving straight in and forward in the same direction that you're making the impact, everything's being delivered. So it starts at your feet, your hips, it goes up through your spine, the shoulders are delivering it, and it's going towards the target. Everything going in that direction. If I come up and my head pops up a couple inches, it's no longer going forward. So
yes.
now I've taken some of that power away. I can't hit with power or as much when I'm standing up. And again, that's just as bad and just as prevalent as people coming up off their rear foot. I think it's actually tied together. When you come up with your rear foot, the guy's head will come up.
Yeah, now that I'm thinking, last time I was, last time me and Chris, the one who came to immediate action with me, I'm always roasting him for picking up that back foot. And I'm thinking about the way he throws it, and I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what happens.
Come on, well, everybody, you kind of look, if you kind of draw an imaginary line, like a plane across where their head's at when they start the punch, and then see if they go through that plane when they end the punch. And everybody does. But if you look at Mike Tyson, look at Liston, look at Foreman. They don't. When they punch, their head stays on the same plane.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna pay extra special attention to this now, to the head coming up.
Yeah,
I'm gonna watch that. What do you think of Tommy Hearns? He used to hit pretty hard, but when I look at his punches, I'm like, geez, how is he able to do it? How is he able to hit so hard with that frame and throwing those punches like that? It's just some black magic. I just can't figure it out.
Well, and that's that's something we have to be very, very careful of. Is there's always anomalies.
Yeah.
In every physical and anything, there's always the anomaly, and we have to be very careful about the lessons that we take from these kind of people.
Right. Right.
You go, okay, Hearns hit the way he did because of this. This is how he hit. Okay, but did that work for him because he was that long, lanky, that ridiculous reach for a middleweight, for a junior, for a super featherweight. Right. He had that ridiculous reach, and you're like, okay, does that have anything to do with it? Does that give you any extra leverage? Does that give you any extra penetration when you hit? All those kind of things. And then if you're built differently, substantially differently, you got, if instead of you being built that way, you look like Joe Frazier. Yeah. Will that change if you use the same mechanics?
Right.
So we have to watch that kind of thing. It's anything can happen and everybody's different, but we have to look at what's applicable across the board for people before we decide this is best practice, right? Yeah. Best practice is what most people can do in the most instances, not what the freak can do, not what the handful of guys can pull off. Mm-hmm.
I could practice imitating Mike Tyson, but I don't have his body. I'll never hit as hard as him because he is Mike Tyson. Because that's Mike Tyson, and I'm me.
Right, exactly. We have to find what general. So we look at what made Mike Tyson work, and you look at those things and go, "Oh yes, I can take that. I can look at those things and I can use that."
Yes.
Hearns is a little bit of an anomaly. I mean, you're better off looking at somebody
really
like
is.
Roberto Duran or even a Sugar Ray Leonard, who didn't hit particularly hard, but they were built more like normal fighters in those weight classes.
Yes, yeah. Hearns is, I don't want, freak sounds, is an insulting word to use, but I've always looked at him as being like, he just looks weird, like just the way he throws, but man, he just kills people.
Right. Oh, it was great to watch. I mean, he had great, and the other thing, like, he kept his hands really low. Right? Is that good to do?
Right. Exactly.
Should we do that? Well, it worked for him. Well, it worked for him until he fought Hagler.
Yeah, exactly.
And then it really didn't work for him.
Yes.
So again, that's that same thing. Like I remember having this discussion with people about Chuck Liddell when Chuck Liddell was at his peak.
Yeah.
Right. And Liddell held his hands really low.
Yeah, held down by his ribs.
Right. And I'm sitting here teaching people, keep your hands attached to your head and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, but Liddell does that. I'm like,
you're not Chuck Liddell.
You're not Chuck Liddell, number one. And then number two, and I said this when he was at his peak, I said, wait till he hits the break point. Because every fighter has it.
Yes.
Every MMA guy goes. I don't care who it was. Vanderlei Silva, Fedor, Anderson Silva.
Anderson Silva's really hot for that.
Yep. Everybody's done it. The thing about MMA is when you hit that moment where you're no longer what you were, it's really, for whatever reason, it's black and white. It's not gradual. Like boxers have a tendency to slowly go downhill.
Yeah.
MMA fighters, it's like you're champion of the world one day, and then the next fight you can't do anything.
Yes. And
that's what happened to Liddell. So he got to the point where his attributes weren't working, and what happened? 4 out of his last 5 fights, he got knocked out.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. So we have to really be careful about, well, it worked for him.
Yes.
Okay.
You have to have the right framing for looking at it and saying, okay, that guy does that. Why does he do it? Is it something special about him that lets him get away with it?
Yep, exactly.
Yes. Yeah, you have to frame it in the right way. We keep kind of coming back to what we said before about things that work for you. Like Mike Tyson, one thing I've noticed about him is that when he's really crushing in on somebody, his feet are almost completely square. Like his feet are parallel to the guy that he's beaten on.
Yep.
And I was like, geez, is that something I should do too, or is that just the way that it worked for him, and he was able to just get unbelievable power, and nobody was ever able to threaten him when he was in that position, sort of deal, right? And I mean, obviously, I'm not Mike Tyson. I don't look like him. I can't fight like him. My body isn't anything like his. So it was just like, it's just one of those things. I'm not gonna run to the gym and be like, okay, this is what I do now.
And are you fighting in the same context that he is too? That's the other thing we got to keep in mind. What works perfectly in a boxing environment might not work perfectly in a kickboxing environment.
Yes,
and what works perfectly there might not work in when any kind of grappling's involved. Mm-hmm. Right? So we have to see, okay, let's say that the way Tyson fought was the best way to generate maximal power. Mm-hmm. Right? I don't think it is, but let's say for the sake of the argument that it is, standing with your feet parallel like that. Okay. But that also makes you incredibly vulnerable to takedowns. Yeah. So you go, at what point do I balance maximizing my power versus opening myself up for getting taken down? Yes.
Yeah, like when he's whooping on somebody up against the ropes, right in on him like that. It's not like somebody is going to come bounce. It's not like they're up against the cage and somebody is going to come bouncing off of that cage right back at him and push him over.
Yep. Or somebody drops to their knees, shoots in, wraps up his legs, and drops him straight back.
Right. Yeah. Because then when he's squared up like that, he's going right on his ass.
Right. And so you go. It doesn't mean that what he's doing is wrong. It just means it's in that context, and we have to see where that fits in. That's the hard part with this multidisciplinary paradigm is that there's so many things, and that nobody's done it to this level with putting it all together where we have a template. We've kind of had to make up and adjust our template as we've gone along.
You could argue that's like maybe the progression of mixed martial arts from all these different styles back in, you know, the 80s and 90s and such, to where it is now, where everybody's sort of kind of doing the same thing. I don't want to say the same thing, but we seem to have come to the same conclusions on what's working the best. It's
exactly the same type of thing. They've had all these things that they've had to put together and synthesize, and they had very little previous examples of it. And so it was hit or miss for years and years. But now we're at this, you know, we're probably the last 10 years, everybody's got a pretty good idea of what it was.
Yes.
But not so much before that. Because, I mean, I'm old enough. I know what it was like in before, and I know what it was like in those early days, and the discussions and the debates and the the experimentation that everybody was doing. And so it's the same thing we're doing now, and MMA is gives us a partial template we can refer to, but again, we still have a lot more that we have to add into it.
There's a lot. It's the ECQC stuff is MMA plus guns, plus knives, plus pre-fight context, plus multiples, plus, you know what I mean? Like,
exactly.
Like, there's a lot going on. Can you? This is just for me. This is the only thing I've got left for you, because my brain can't take anymore. I'm like, I'm packed.
Okay.
Can you, like I said, this is mostly for me. If anybody listening gets benefit from it, then that's fine. That's good. Can you give me one practice solo drill to help me improve my traction with punching and get that weight driving forward and not up? What's a way that I can work on that solo?
Blind shadow boxing. Shadow box. Close your eyes. And when you're doing it, start off pretty slow, pretty low intensity. Gradually escalate it and find out where you screw up. Find out where the mistakes happen. Find out you'll feel faster than you'll see when you're not driving. Because now you're taking away what you're trying to do. Right? With your eyes open, we have a tendency to focus on what's in front, what's there, not on feeling what we're doing. So you close your eyes and you just try to do it. And you feel each time you throw a punch, you think about, if this was a wall, could I knock it over? If this was a car, could I push it with this movement? And you just feel your body doing what it's supposed to, and you'll go, oh, look, I'm coming up on my toes. Why am I coming up on my toes? Why is my head 2 inches higher than it was when I started the punch? What does that accomplish? You'll feel it faster than you'll see it.
Nice. Perfect. Cecil, that's... I got a lot to think about.
That's good.
I really appreciate it, man. Thanks for taking so long to chat with me.
You bet. I was like, okay, all right, I'm not going to be doing it for hours and hours, but the problem is I like talking about this stuff. This is important to me. This is what I love to do. And so when I'm talking to somebody who either is interested or who's speaking the same language too, then it just encourages me to do this. Last night, one of the other black belts was talking to me about We were talking about the Fort Lauderdale shooter.
Oh yeah.
And he was, he's just starting to get into this idea of self-defense. And he asked me what he could do, because he goes to Fort Lauderdale for work. He was just there this last week. And he was asking me, and so we were kind of talking about it. It meant to be like one quick question, and 15 minutes later, we're still talking.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's like, oh, somebody else from the gym wants to know this stuff. Awesome, great, I'm all for that.